I've always been afraid of professor types. In grad school, I never knew how to schmooze, how to ooze my personality out in personal ways. I learned early on that professors are most interested in students who can speak their minds boldly, but students who are afraid of their own shadows and who reveal nothing of themselves, students who nod yes or no in line with everything said from the big desk on high, and laugh at every bit of humor that comes from the professor's mouth. These quail people, these spots in your feasts of charity, clouds they are, without water, carried about winds. Trees whose fruit withereth, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots, raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackest darkness forever. These students were my kith and kin. So now that I have to be a colleague of someone like Dr. Shirley Kilpatrick, I, who never learned how to speak to adults with 100% of my personality, am a nervous wreck. Dr. Kilpatrick has her office at the top of Ferncliff, the holiest of holies, the 3rd floor. To go to her classes, she comes down the central stairwell, which means for about half of the steps, she's looking through the doorway at the bottom of the stairs, directly into my office, directly at me. She can't round the corner without my whole office standing open for her observation. Sometimes I say hello, and she says, "Hello, Daniel." And I feel sort of like I just passed by the armor of Joan of Arc. And it said my name out of the wraith darkness dwelling therein. When great personages call you by your name, they are not merely tagging some statement in order to give it direction so it hits its mark. No, they are affirming your reality, at the same time as challenging you to live up to the responsibility of being an existing thing. So whenever she passes by, says my name, and then leaves, I'm left alone, missing my tiny office because I used to feel gigantic there. She passes, and I remember how small I am, and my eyes happen to glance up to a very fat book on my shelf, written by the beautiful Mad Russian. There it is, taking up a lot of space, the Brothers K. I think Dr. Kilpatrick's eyes saw the book on my shelf one day, and there was a light of approval in her eye. But if she only knew the truth about my relationship with the book, that light might have gone dark. At this year's Meet the Freshmen meeting, I asked Dr. Kilpatrick, what's a book that every writer absolutely must read? I knew what one of her answers would be, but I thought maybe some other book would squeak in around it. But no, she said The Brothers, and when she said it, I could tell that a question was just behind her teeth. Though her eyes saw into my eyes, and she found her answer without a word. He's never read it. But it's worse than that, Shirley. I tried to read it. And I stopped. To my credit, I made it 300 pages in at about Smerdyakov and his guitar. If his guitar played before in the novel, I don't remember, and I certainly don't remember how it played again. Now she knows. But it isn't that terrible that she knows, because I know the truth. The next time Shirley rounds the bend at the bottom of the stairs and her piercing eyes look into mine, I know that she will say, "Hello, Daniel." Not, "Hello, Danny boy." Not, "Hello, kid," but Daniel. And what she will mean is, there's time, Daniel, for you to try again. Read the book and step up into the full height of your existence, or die trying. It's pretty intense stuff for a morning's hello. But that's what you get when you've read so far back that Shakespeare is a twinkle in his parents' eyes, and Beowulf is in his leather diaper. It's heavy stuff, the heaviest, and beautiful, the kind of beauty that can know the words of 1,000 years, carry the weight of many worlds, and yet smile and laugh so easily and loud. That's what you get when armed with the most important, tragic, and beautiful stories in the world. You get your name said properly, and it makes you want your name. your existence. You want to take care of it, to live up to it somehow. Thank you, Shirley.
Daniel. And thank you all for being here. Well, years ago, I spent some time studying Ecclesiastes, and in an effort to see things afresh, I tried writing some found poems. That is, I composed some poems made up entirely from statements taken directly from the biblical text. My contribution was one of discovery and arrangement. The found poem that had the most lasting effect on me was a poem about what and how we know. It's a poem which calls for a deep humility and an abiding confidence. It's called The Teacher, an internal dialogue. I know that there is nothing better than to be happy and to do good while we live. But what does a poor man gain by knowing how to conduct himself before others? Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, the stillborn child has more rest. Well, I know that everything God does will endure forever. You don't know whether you will be wise or foolish. You don't know if the human spirit rises upward. You do not know if the animal spirit goes down into the earth. You do not know what is good for you in life. You do not know the explanation of things. You do not know the future. You do not know the meaning of things. You do not know whether love or hate awaits you. You do not know when your hour will come. You do not know what disaster will come upon the land. You do not know the path of the wind. You do not know how the body is formed in the mother's womb. You don't know what will succeed, even if you claim to know. You do not even know the way to town. Yes, that is in the text. I know that God will bring you to judgment. I know that it will go better for the God-fearing man. I know the more knowledge, the more grief. I know the living will die, and that the living should take this to heart. I have spent my entire career trying to know and help others to know. And at the end of my full-time career, I am reminded of the Apostle Paul's words. He writes, "We know that we all possess knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. The person who thinks they know something does not yet know as they ought to know." Augustine knew firsthand what knowledge can do. The more he knew, the deeper he descended into human vanity. Puffed up with pride, he said, "I considered myself a mature adult." But as his confessions testify, the Lord rescued him from this delusion so that he could love that beauty so ancient and so new. I want to explore this problem of knowing. When I first began my teaching career at Geneva, some of my colleagues fondly called me the High Priestess of Doom. A title I rather relished. Dr. Williams assured me there was room for doom here tonight. So. I lived into that role in ways that were deadly serious. Virtually all my teaching assignments involved leading students into dark places. The place where Oedipus puts out his eyes. The place where the stabbed, poisoned Hamlet dies in Horatio's arms. The place where Candide declares there's a horrible amount of evil in the world. The place where Keats wants to cease upon the midnight with no pain. The place where Gregor turns into a giant cockroach and dries up in the corner of his room. But in this moment, near the conclusion of my teaching career, I want to be the high priestess of doom in another sense. For us, doom has only negative connotation, but historically the word is a bit more resonant than that. Doom is historically about right judgment. In the English Chester plays of 1607, we hear of the general resurrection when Christ is bound to doom both good and evil. In Phineas Fletcher's 1633 poem Purple Island, we read that there the equal judge dooms each voice aright. I have come to this, likely the final public reading of my teaching career, and I am ready to doom. And I feel confident that I can make this judgment aright. I begin my deliberation with a writing topic well known in education, what I did on my summer vacation. As I reflect back, I want to focus on the day I was traveling by train from the west coast of Wales across to London and then up to the northern border of England. Though the countryside is very beautiful, it's a tiring trip on the best of days. Fortunately, the UK trains have what is known as the quiet car. Signs make it clear there are to be no conversations, no cell phones, just peaceful silence for reading, looking, and dozing. And I was well prepared with Anne Bronte's Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Along the way, two young men boarded the train and sat directly behind me in the quiet car. They immediately broke the taboo and began to talk and talk and talk and talk for miles and miles and miles, clear to the end of that particular line. And what was the scintillating topic of conversation? The life and thought of Karl Marx. These two young men were PhD students and they knew everything about Marx. I mean, everything. Marx, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree, because Marx, blah, blah, blah. Well, I would argue that you were wrong, unless you, of course, you mean the young Marx, blah, blah. Well, it is true that Marx's position on this point underwent some change, blah, blah. I seriously contemplated turning around and beating them both to death with my Kindle. They were this close. On reflection, this response struck me as an irony. I'm supposedly an academic. I'm supposed to admire such thorough knowledge of important figures like Marx. Indeed, I'm supposed to be having significant, informed conversations about such important topics myself. But what I heard was not, in fact, a conversation. Dr. Peyton, who was with me, and also also contemplating murder, later described what we heard as a duel. Well, duel might be too violent an image, but the interchange was at the very least a fencing match in which the competitor earned a point for each time he was able to break through the opponent's defense and touch him with his weapon. But unlike a fencing match, which lasts only a very few minutes, these two were able to sustain their match ad nauseum. It only ceased because the train came to a stop, at which point Dr. Peyton asked them if they could read. Yes, I read 6 languages. One of them replied. She pointed to the sign. Clearly, they had trouble comprehending the challenging English phrase, quiet calm. And this is the reason I pass judgment. The interchange between these highly intelligent young men was not an exploration of what we need to glean from a study of Marx so that we can see our way forward to a better life. There was nothing truly human about the interchange at all. It is not a surprise then that it was easy for these young men to consider as irrelevant the well-being of the people seated around them. Eventually, I made my way back to Beaver Falls, back to the intelligent young man with whom I have been spending the last 16 years of my life. We did not meet on the train. We met when I pulled up to what was then the Inn on College Hill in my ancient blue Chevy. I was there to pick him up and take him to his interview with me and the rest of the search committee. How unsettling it must have been for him to get in a badly peeling car with this older woman in head-to-toe black leather. But he got in, and that was the beginning of our journey together. Actually, it was a short ride. And it might have ended there. As part of his interview visit, he came to hear me lecture, during which he asked Dr. Szabo, what critical theory is she using? When Dr. Szabo reported this to me, I thought, damn. I thought of more words too, but that'll do. I knew he saw instantly that I was not working out of any of the critical theories then jockeying for position in the academy. I believed I had been found out, and I would surely be condemned. And when he became a permanent fixture in Ferncliff, I avoided him like the plague, though I had been one of the ones who had invited him to come. You're getting the idea that Ferncliff is just a seething cauldron. It sort of is, I know. Well, I tried to avoid him, but his office was on one side of mine, and Dr. Matzenbose's was on the other. And Dr. Matt was wiser than I. He had an immediate love for this new neighbor, so the machinations began. Dr. Matt maneuvered every which way to make me connect with my new neighbor. He made it clear to me that we three were going to be friends together. And so through the maneuverings of the very determined Dr. Matt, I was forced into a greeting here, a conversation there, a lunch here, a cup of tea there, until I found myself slowly coming to to trust this new friend. Eventually, the ride in the car, as it were, was over, and we started walking together. And what a journey it has been. I am now ready to pass judgment on it. And so I speak directly to you, old friend. You describe in your Humanities 103 personal narrative what so easily happens in advanced academic studies. You write, all of the striving that I had done to become smarter about America and the world wasn't translating with too much ease into good parenting and husbanding. If anything, I had the sense that my career path, as they say, was leading me away from those kinds of concerns that are truly of fundamental importance. From the time you were quite young, you have had a longing for and a vision for what is good. Despite all the pressures which seek to eclipse that vision, you have remained like the man Barrie describes in his poem, The Handing Down. This man has dreamed of a town fit for the abiding of souls and bodies that might live forever. He has seen it in a far-off white and gold evening of summer, the black flight of swifts turning above it in the air. The day came when you and I sat down and dreamed together. How hard that can be for professors in the highly specialized, highly individualized, highly competitive world of academia. Even if professors overcome these tendencies, they still face the soul-killing demands of so-called measurable outcomes, products, and deliverables. But you and I were like Simon and Garfunkel's old friends. We sat on the metaphorical park bench like bookends, and we put between us texts we thought could help us and our students to seek the good, to seek the ways that are fit for the abiding of souls and bodies. And we did it remembering Barrie's argument in his Sabbath poem. I adapt what he says to us. The truth, he writes, will never be complete in any mind or time. It will never be reduced to an explanation. What we had was only a sack of fragments never to be filled, old bones, fossils, facts, scraps of writing, sprawls of junk. We knew only poorly and in part. The best and worst may be forgotten. However we arrange the pieces, however authentic, a story is what we would have, an artifact for better or worse. So we went ahead. We gathered our findings into a plausible arrangement. We made a story. We showed how love and joy, beauty and goodness shine out amongst the rubble. Guided by your vision, wisdom, and humility, we made the story of Humanities 103, a book about life, a story ultimately joyful, though it considers all the facts. Others have joined us, and a community has developed based on a common commitment, common reading, and common prayer. You and I, and those who have joined us, believe what Barrie observes at a country funeral, that the community of knowing in common is the seed of our life in this place. There is not only no better possibility, there is no other, except for chaos and darkness, the terrible ground of the only possible new start. We have certainly felt the presence of chaos and darkness. We have often felt alone, even within this place. Still, we remain convinced that knowing in common knowing in ways that are deeply theological and liturgical, provides the only real hope. This is not a new thought. Generation upon generation of Christians knew it before us. But in the modern world, we have given up this vision, even in the realm of Christian higher education. We and those who labor with us in Humanities 103 have staked everything on this communal, theological, liturgical vision of knowledge and life. We both realize that we could not have written the story of 103 without each other. Who could have predicted this? When we were riding between the inn on College Hill and the campus in that old blue Chevy. Such a partnership can only happen by grace. So as I reflect on these past years together, the work of our hands and the hands of our beloved partners, I declare a doom. And I call the work good. This is a cause for celebration. That's why I'm saying these things now. But of course, I am also looking ahead to what we both know is coming. The day when this partnership, as we have known it, ends. It is so painful to think about, even frightening. It can feel a little like death. I'm reminded of Barry's words in his poem Testament when he contemplates his death, and he says to his dear relatives and friends, "Don't let your ignorance of my spirit's whereabouts dismay you or overwhelm your thoughts. Be careful not to say anything too final. Whatever is unsure is possible, and life is bigger than flesh. Beyond reach of thought, let imagination figure your hope." While actual death is not the issue for us, there is wisdom here about the future. It's tempting to think or say some things that seem very final. But let's try not to. When I am no longer in the picture, you don't know what crazy thing might happen. If an older lady in black leather driving up an appealing Chevy can step into your life, then who knows what might come next. Your imagination will remain intact, and it will still be able to do what God intended it to do. It will still be able to hope and to dream. The writer of Ecclesiastes tells us that a cord of three strands is not quickly broken. Years ago, I made Dr. Matt a gift of a 3-strand cord, a way to symbolize the relationship between him and me and you. It was late in his life when I knew he needed the assurance that only committed friendship can bring. When he left, the cord came to me. Now I am passing it to you. No matter what happens in the future, we have known the power of the 3-strand cord. Thanks be to God, we're not limited to one cord. You, Dr. Frazier, and I are a 3-strand cord, and we rely on the strength of the 3 strands woven together. So, old friend, as the high priestess, I declare our doom, and my judgment is that our bond has been profoundly good. With apologies to C.S. Lewis, I say with confidence and gratitude, our friendship is about something. The discovery of shared secret loves, the same God, the same beauty, the same truth, the pleasure of cooperation, mutual respect and understanding, and appreciative love, and poetry, the fruit of intercourse between our two minds.